Episode 59 of Coffee with the Coach. I'm here with my man, Magic Mike, and it is a G-Men Friday because it's all Giants, all show today. It's going to be awesome.
Yes, sir. Jeff, welcome in. Welcome everybody watching. Jeff, 7 weeks to go. You're on the verge of the season starting for you as well. Again, I say it every week. We're almost there. Exciting times to be a football fan.
Yeah, and you know what? Big news for the Irish NFL show, too. You guys are doing a London show this year.
We're doing a London show on the 16th of October. I think that's the day before the Jets play the Falcons, all being well. Looking forward to it. Hopefully a special guest announced soon. Sources have it that we're going to speak to the Hamilton Tiger Cats to try and get Jeff Reinebold out of his contract for 2 days. I don't know, but yeah, looking forward to it, man. It's going to be good.
I think you guys are going to do a great job. You know, a lot of stuff going on in the league right now. Did you see the deal with Davante Adams? Now, you talk about adding a layer of intrigue already on top of what's going on in Green Bay. Davante Adams has walked away from contract negotiations on a long-term deal.
It's like the GIF or the GIF you see on Twitter, like eating the popcorn. I think every other NFL fan at the minute, apart from Packers fans, are just sitting back, getting the popcorn and going, oh, we're days away from camp. And you got the whole Rodgers situation. You've got the whole Davante Adams situation. And you can't call it. Like, I know you can be prudent and say, oh, you know, they'll probably go back to camp. But the reality is, you know, there's a reason why Adams has walked away there. And you've seen from Schefter all week, Jeff, as well, talking about Rodgers. All is not well in Green Bay. All is not well.
No, and I would be legitimately concerned if I'm a Packer fan. Interesting note, Rick Dennison, the offensive line coach for the Minnesota Vikings, was terminated today. Mm-hmm. He was fired because he did not choose to get vaccinated. And they told him they wanted him to get vaccinated. He refused to do it, and they fired him. Really, really interesting how strong a stance the NFL has taken on this. I don't know if you saw I think earlier in the week, Mike, they talked about if you're a team that can't play because of COVID, that there's no rescheduling of games, you're going to lose that football game. So it's interesting. You know, we talked about Cole Beasley and this whole COVID thing about not getting vaccinated. And I think this is just another indication of where the league, how hard-nosed the league is on this issue and the teams.
Obviously as well, like I'm a big Broncos fan, and seeing a guy like Rick Dennison, who's been in Denver for such a long time, obviously at different teams now, seeing that today was surprising. And the word came out from different guys like Tom Pelissero, Ian Rappaport yesterday in regards to the whole situation, in regards to vaccines. Time will tell what goes on. But the one thing that I find very interesting was the majority, Jeff, of the staff, the coaching staff and the head coaches apparently now have their vaccine. And there's 5 teams apparently that are very low on uptake. So it will be interesting to see what happens. I seen DeAndre Hopkins' tweet yesterday, which he very quickly deleted about the vaccine. It's that time of year. There's just opinions players are getting. But look, at the end of the day, we've talked about this a couple of weeks ago. If you don't take a vaccine, your season, your comfortness in that season, in the sense of going to training, coming home to the family, it completely shifts. So there is a huge difference. Whether you agree to take it or not, or want to take it, that's a whole different conversation. The NFL have put this protocol into place. They clearly don't want to play a Week 19 season to make up games, and they won't. At the end of the day, Jeff, my team last year had to play a game without a quarterback because the NFL wanted the game to go on. So I'll tell you one thing, though, in a positive spin, Jeff, I think London happens. So.
Bro, your team played 16 games last year without a quarterback. I saw the quarterback play in Denver last year.
I will never forget, though, on the Saturday night.
How about Mike Florio? Mike Florio comes out and some crazy take that somehow Cole Beasley is trying to get himself cut with his COVID stance. I mean, what? That is the most outrageous thing I've ever heard. And I mean, that I would have thought that would come from Colin Cowherd, not pro football talk. But hey, I guess it's that time of year, bro. Hey, we're going to talk a bunch of Giant stuff today, right? We got the Giants UK fan club is going to join us and talk about what they got going on with Big Blue. And Markus Kuhn, who is a German player that was, played at NC State, was drafted by the Giants, played with the Giants for a number of years. The first German player to ever score a touchdown in the National Football League. The first German player ever invited to the NFL Combine. He's going to stop by. He's now working in personnel for the Giants. He's going to stop by and visit with us. I think the fans are going to love his interview because he is a character and a lot of fun to talk to.
Yes, sir. And it's good to have this sort of one team focus going into the season, because especially some of the teams like the Giants, who maybe didn't make the playoffs last year, but they were quite close to it at the end because of their division. So it's good to hear from Markus, but it's also good to hear from Dan, Jeff, if you want to introduce Dan.
All right. Dan Aylett is one of the key guys with the I guess UK Giants fan club, and a lifetime Giants fan. And it's an amazing story about how he became a Giants fan. But guy is passionate, man. I'm telling you, behind that red beard is a blue soul. He is a Giant all the way, and a great guy to talk to. It was really a blast. I really like this fan forum idea we got, Mike. I think, you've created a real cool thing, and I can't wait to see who we get on next week and hear from the fans all through the season, because that's what this podcast really originated as, is a way to connect with the fans. So I appreciate you coming up with the fan forum idea. That's why we pay you the big bucks around here, buddy.
I'll say nothing there, but obviously great to be on here as always, Jeff, and I massively appreciate it. And yeah, if anybody is watching this, and you don't have to be in charge of a fan group, but if you're a fan of a team, let us know. Reply to this tweet below. Reach out to me at Michael_NFL, because Jeff's too busy to do anything at the minute, and I will set it up. And here is Dan from, I think, Big Blue UK, New York Giants fans, and we'll tag him under as well.
This is the part of the show that we really enjoy. This is new. It's called Fan Forum. It's an opportunity for us to get out and talk to the fans and the big fan clubs, the UK fan clubs, the Ireland fan clubs, all over Europe, fan clubs that find a way somehow to love their teams from a long way away. This is Dan Aylett from a Giants fan club, correct, Dan?
Absolutely, 100% from a Giants fan club.
All right, so if I'm going to look you guys up on Twitter, or I'm going to follow you, how do I go about finding out about the club?
Cool, so you can find us on Twitter at New York Giants Fans UK, and we're on Facebook as well. And myself and two guys from that fan group, we also recently, sort of within the last 6 months, have started our own podcast as well.
So we got a G-Man podcast on the air, huh?
I've got a UK G-Man podcast on the air, yeah. We're at Big Blue UK IRL, Big Blue UK in Ireland on Twitter. You can follow us there as well. That's myself, Shane and Kev from the group, talking all things Giants week in, week out, and having a blast, having a good fun.
Again, this show is kind of a Giants Big Blue Day, because we're having Markus Kuhn on, Super Bowl winner with the New York Giants, and Germany scored the first touchdown in the National Football League by a European player, German player.
Yeah, nice.
A really cool guy, and loves his Giants even to this day. As an ex-Giant, he loves his Giants, so he'll be on the show. We'll chop that up. But let's get back to you and your club now. When you guys found it, Dan? How long ago has this thing been going on?
So the UK Giants Club, they've been around sort of, I think, 2006, 2007, so getting on for 15 years. Obviously, the international series that came over in 2007, the Dolphins game, that sort of helped to grow the fan base here for the Giants. I've been a fan since, my first Giants game I ever watched was the Super Bowl in 2000 when we lost to the Ravens, which wasn't a great start to being a Giants fan. But after that, I sort of went up, didn't really pay much attention to the sport for the next sort of few years, and then 2006, I really sort of started paying attention to the game. My brother's a Colts fan, and it sort of only felt right that I followed his younger brother. I followed Peyton Manning's younger brother and Eli Manning. And I love New York, the city itself. So it only seemed right.
Okay, that was,
Um,
that's the question that I always ask fans in Europe that, like, how did you get into football? How did you pick your team? Like I picked Leeds United because they had beautiful white uniforms in 1995 when I was watching them on TV. So, you can pick a team for so many very reasons.
Absolutely, yeah. And the history behind the Giants as well. That would really appeal to me. Like I'm a Manchester United fan, so we've got a big rivalry, you and Coach. United and Leeds, they're big rivals here in the UK. So the history and the sort of the tradition behind the club really appealed to me, and it appealed to a lot of fans here in the UK as well. It's something we can relate to, and it's only an 8-hour flight away to the East Coast. And yeah, just the whole Giants organisation from sort of top to bottom really appealed to me. And then obviously in 2007 when we went on that uh, crazy Super Bowl run and ended up beating the undefeated 18-0 Patriots in that Super Bowl, and in that year, sort of that really sort of solidified my them as my team, I think.
So
And
now,
Keith and Andy at the UK Giants group in the group, they really sort of run the show there. They do an amazing job running that show. Um, and it's all credit the group's all credit to them. We've got sort of 2,500 followers on Twitter, 2,500 followers on Facebook. Pre-COVID, meeting up for to watch games together as fans and just talking football, and it's sort of snowballed from there really, and it's a
I love it.
great community to be part of.
I love it. Now, do you get fans from where do you meet in London? You meet where?
Yeah, usually in London. Myself and Keith and Andy are all sort of relatively close to London, and we've got a huge sort of Giants fan base in and around London. There's Giants fans all over the UK, sort of from the Highlands of Scotland out into Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales, South West Coast, Cornwall, Devon. There's Giants fans all over the UK, but we try and sort of make it as central as we can, and generally that ends up being London because that's the best place to watch football. And obviously the international series games coming to London help as well. And yeah, they're usually a good excuse to meet up with other Giants fans.
Well, I hope when you're watching football, you're watching it on Sky. That's all I'm going to say. That's
Oh,
all I'm going to
no,
say.
no doubt, no doubt,
Well,
coach.
let's talk. Let's
It's
talk
quite it's
about
quite
the big
surreal
one.
actually talking to you today and seeing you on TV like on Sky Sports. It's actually quite surreal talking to you today, so it's an absolute pleasure as well.
My pleasure. Let's talk those Giants. All right.
How about that?
There's got to be a sense of optimism around Giants fans right now, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, the jury's still out with Daniel Jones. He's got to have a stellar year, but he's got the weapons to have that good year. Obviously, with Barkley being put on the pup list yesterday for the beginning of camp, doesn't surprise any of us. He's not going to be back on the field till he's 100%. And the defense last year, we had a great year on defense last year. We're in the top 8 in defense in the league, and I think they're only going to get better. And that offense, now we've got those weapons in place. Kadarius Toney looks scarily good. And with on the opposite side of the ball as well, Azeez Ojulari as our sort of edge linebacker. He dropped to us in the draft quite nicely. There is a lot of optimism about this Giants team. I don't want to be too optimistic and say yeah we'll go out and win the division, but it's a definite possibility. Obviously, we've got Dak Prescott and the Cowboys in the way to sort of get in the division because at this time of year everyone's always jumping on the Cowboys and fair play, they've had a few good years, but Dak really needs to come out and prove that he can do it for the Cowboys as well. But no, there is a lot of optimism about this team. Joe Judge is really building a good culture in that team. We've seen it from Logan Ryan and the secondary sort of going out and actively recruiting players to come on board, and him going out to and taking Odori Jackson out for dinner and things like that. It just shows what culture Joe Judge is bringing into this club, and it's a really really positive sign. I'm just looking forward to the season, man.
I wondered how you or the average Giant fan would fall on Joe Judge, because his I guess his methods are kind of different for this day and age, this NFL. But to be honest with you, I'm a big fan of his, and I think he's added a toughness and a discipline into that team, and I think you saw it about week 4 or 5 last year, I think the buy-in started to really happen.
Yeah, definitely. It's like you said, the discipline I think is a huge one. He doesn't accept mediocrity by the looks of it. He doesn't accept, players turning up late for practice. He doesn't accept even coaches not doing their job. I mean, he wasn't scared to release coaches midway through the season last year, and that just goes to show that he's dedicated to his job and he wants the best out of everyone. And if someone's not performing at their best, he's not scared to make that decision and let them go. The coaching team he's brought in around him is really impressive as well, and I think they can take things forward. Rob Sale, obviously our new offensive line coach, on paper he looks like a great coach, and he's so far what we've seen of him as well, he's proven to be a great addition to the team.
All right, so let's go to that again. You give me such great segues because I wanted to talk to you about the offense because this is an offense that I think he scored 1 point per drive over the season. It's lowest in the NFL. Struggled with big plays, struggled to get the ball in the end zone, closing out drives. Jason Garrett, I thought, got a lot of criticism last year. And even though he's managing the game in a way that gives the Giants a chance to be in the game, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He's been a lightning rod since he came over from Dallas. What's the general take amongst Giants fans about Jason Garrett?
From my opinion, I think he's been a great addition. He's brought that experience to the offense and in that offensive room. It's only a matter of time. If he has a good year this year, it's only a matter of time before he moves on and becomes a head coach somewhere else. That's the potential he's got, and he showed it with Dallas. I mean, yeah, they didn't win it all, but he was fairly consistent with Dallas. And he's been the way he's designed his playbook has really impressed me, and I know it's impressed a lot of Giants fans here as well. And the way he's working with Joe Judge, I think they work really well together. You can see they bouncing ideas off of each other. They're designing that playbook to play to the strengths of our offense, and obviously now bringing in additional players such as Kadarius Toney that has so much potential. I hope they design some plays purely around him because he can do so much with that ball. It's madness.
I think it's interesting that you bring up Kadarius Toney because we talked about those statistics, not being able to get drives in the end zone, those kinds of things, lack of big play production out of
red zone as well was a struggle.
Yeah. This is where I think a specialty guy like Kadarius Toney, with his elusiveness, and all of the speed and talent that he has, and I think when Saquon gets back, this could be an explosive Giants offense. Daniel Jones, again, there's another lightning rod for both, praise and criticism. As a Giants fan, do you feel comfortable that he's a good enough quarterback to lead you to the Super Bowl?
I genuinely do. I think with the offense he's got around him, there's no reason he can't. He's got the skill set and he's got the capability. It's just putting it all together and showing it on field. He reminds me so much of Eli Manning when he came to the Giants. But at the same time, he still needs to produce those the wins, get the wins in the column, and get us to that postseason. We were close last year. Don't get me wrong. We were one game away. We were that one decision away in Philadelphia, where he decided to bench Jalen Hurts, which wasn't great. But we were close last year. This year, I can see it could be in a close battle again. But going back to the question, Daniel Jones, I believe he can do the job. It's just a matter of seeing it, and that's the sort of biggest reservation on most Giants fans at the moment is they haven't seen that clutch play that rather than driving the team down to score in the last 2 minutes and then leaving a minute left on the clock. He's driving that team down. He's managing that clock, and we're scoring the winning touchdown and the winning field goal with seconds remaining. So, we end up winning the game. We lost a lot of tight games last season. So he needs to improve. He needs to turn that around. He needs to be better in the red zone. He needs to give that end product, and rather than go for 3, he needs that 7 points on the board because touchdowns win your games.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot like people put us on the spot, and I'm going to ask you: this team, can they win 10? Can they win 7? Where do you see them at when we get into December next year?
So my overall prediction for the season was to go 10-7. I think we can win 10 games. The schedule was there's a big part in the middle of the schedule where we play Tampa Bay, we have a bye week, and then we play Kansas City coming out of the bye. Those 3 weeks are huge, but I genuinely believe we can win 10 games this year. Looking at that schedule, looking at the roster that we have, the confidence on both sides of the ball that we have, I genuinely believe we can win 10 games at least. And it's just a question of, can any other team in that division win more? We all, this time of year everyone favours Dallas to win the division, and whether that's rightly so or not, that remains to be seen. But
you're not conceding, are you?
No, hell no.
You're not just anointing Dallas the NFC East champion, are you?
No, never, I would never do such a thing. But yeah, I would be. I'm looking for progress this year, and I think if Daniel Jones progresses from what he's done in the last couple of years with the new weapons on offense and with that offense as a whole, even if we don't win the division, I'll still be happy. But regardless, I still want to win that division. I still want to beat Dallas. I want to beat Philly. I want to beat Washington. I want to be NFC champs for the first time in 10 years. And I strongly believe that it can happen.
Do you have any friends that are Dallas fans? Do you have any Cowboy friends?
Not many. not many. No,
you wouldn't be a loyal Giant fan if you did.
No, I think the only friends I have that are Cowboys fans are probably just friends that I know, and they've decided to start, following the game, and they've then started to follow the Cowboys for whatever reason. They've gone down in my estimations because they follow the Cowboys, but no, I can't say I'm close friends with any Cowboys fans, to be honest with you.
All right, and every time on Fan Forum we do this, and it's just about your time, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds to tell me why, if I'm a new football fan, why I should be a Giants fan. Ready? Go.
The history, the fact that we play on the east coast of the US, and it's the time zone. It's easy to get there. The Giants are a traditional, one of the original franchises in the league. We play good football. We play hard defense. We traditionally run the ball, and we play exciting football on the offense. And the future's bright. Joe Judge, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Kadarius Toney. What more can I say?
You did that in 27 seconds. That was pretty impressive, my man. Pretty impressive. You sold me. All right. Now, how does somebody in the UK or somebody coming to the UK or new to the UK that is a Giants fan, how do they locate you guys and become a part of what you got going on with the Big Blue fans?
Cool. Yeah, as I said at the start, obviously we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter at New York Giants Fans UK. Come and join the community because we'll welcome you with open arms. We're very passionate about the team, and we just talk football. We don't have any garbage. We don't have any, even in the sort of Facebook groups that we have, we do sort of like a weekly watch along. We'll have a thread for each game, but one of the rules in that group is there is no swearing, because if kids want to join, if kids are following the game and they want to become a Giants fan, we want parents to be able to feel like actually it's family friendly and they can be welcomed into the group with open arms, because we want as many fans as possible in the group. And we just talk football. That's all we do. We don't beat around the bush. We talk football. Whether it's a good game, whether it's a bad game, at the end of the day, we're all Giants fans, and we always will be. And like I said, we've got our Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast as well, which we sort of try to launch every week. We talk Giants football. There's three of us, me, Shane, and Kev. Like we're sitting down the pub, having a beer and talking Giants football. That's all we do, week in, week out. And it's a great community to be part of. And I'm proud to be a member of the fan club. That's for sure. I'm proud to be a Giant.
I'm going to have to tune into your podcast, and again, I appreciate you bringing that message to you. I think that's really important. That all of the forums, all the fan things that we're involved in as NFL fans, let's keep them, as they said in that movie, let's keep it classy, and
and that's what we like to show. The Giants are a classy organization. We want to show class too.
Appreciate you, Dan. What an awesome experience coming on here and talking ball with us, talking Giants football, talking a UK Giants fan club. The Big Blue are well represented in the UK, and I appreciate you very much for being on the show.
No, mahalo, Coach. I really appreciate being on.
You throw a little Hawaiian at me. That's even better, brother.
You know, of course. No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, check out our podcast. Give us a listen.
We'll do it.
Tell us what you think.
Do it, brother. All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, my man. Take care.
Aloha. Well, it is a G-Man kind of day around here. We are talking about the New York Giants. We've had the New York Giant UK fan club on, and now we are going to have a true G-Man. And I mean, when I'm talking about a G-Man, I'm talking about a German G-Man. This is one of the great stories that I've been around in my coaching career. Markus Kuhn, who is a born and bred German player who played for the New York Giants, and now, as he told me moments ago, is working for the New York Giants. Markus, welcome to the show.
Jeff, I really appreciate you having me. This is going to be exciting. I'm already happy. I rushed home from work, still sweaty a little bit, but you know what? It's worth it to be here.
Hey, man. You know, I think we need to start really with your story and, you know, how you came to play football, first of all, and then the journey that you had, really almost that you had to self-navigate almost to get to college, to get drafted, to get to play in the Super Bowl, to become all the things that we're going to talk about in this show. Take us through what that was like, your football journey.
Didn't get to play in the Super Bowl, broadcasted a few Super Bowls. That was the one thing I missed, but ended up even scoring a touchdown in this crazy league. But kind of starting from zero, I grew up in Germany, tried almost every sport there is to try forcefully, as every German boy, I would say. I started playing soccer when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, but quickly realized that wasn't for me. Had a shot at basketball, played a little handball, even played some golf when I was younger. But I had a family vacation when I was 14 with my parents and my sister, and first time I've ever been to US, we did a round trip to Florida, and I saw these big stadiums and I saw American football on TV, and I kind of looked at the sport and I said, you know what, I think this could be something for me, like just by what's going on the field. And I saw these big guys running into each other, and I was like, you know what, I would love to try it myself. Funny enough, my sister, who's 3 years older than me, had 3 guys in her class who was in a local club team playing football there. And she asked them, hey, would you like to take my little brother to one of your practices? And like I said, I tried many sports, but the first time I've ever was in a football practice, I literally immediately fell in love with the sport. I mean, I was like, you know what, this is for me. Never obviously thought about where this is all going to take me and be such a big part of my life. But I knew right away, this is the sport. I'm going to stick with it, at least for the foreseeable future. And that's how I kind of got my toes in the water.
Brother, tell me about that first practice. Like, did you have any idea what was going on? I mean, like, how much you had seen the game obviously on TV, but what was that first practice like?
So we had an old school coach. His name is Haris Tzelos. Coach Tzelos, we always called him. Actually coached the All-Star team from Baden-Württemberg, which when you scouted me for the NFL Europe later on.
Yep.
I mean, tough guy. And what I liked about the sport that he kind of immediately ingrained in me what it's actually all about. I mean, you see the toughness and the roughness, but I think what he taught really well is this: American football is the ultimate team sport. There's nothing close to it. I mean, you can play soccer and you can play basketball. You have one star on the team, and ultimately, you know, you're going to win a bunch of games. But there's nothing like football. If all parts don't work together, it's just not going to work out. You can have a great quarterback. If you don't have an offensive line, you have great receivers. If you don't have a quarterback, like your defense, everything matters, and everybody on the field matters. And this whole, you work out together, you sweat together, you blood together, that kind of all team feeling of it, that just kind of caught me right away. And I had no pads when I first showed up there. And then these guys were playing with pads, and these guys, I was 14, 15 years old. And back then in Germany, the youth league was between 15 and 19-year-old guys. And I was going against 17, 18-year-old guys. You know, I never saw the weight room. I was a bigger kid, but I didn't belong on a football field at that point of time. But just like overall, just measuring yourself up against other men physically right away kind of triggered something in me. And I enjoyed it. And they put me as tight end because coach said, "Hey, you have big hands. You can probably catch the ball pretty well." So my first year I was a tight end. My second year they said, maybe you should be a defensive player. And then I played linebacker. And then my third year, when I became bigger and better in Germany back then, when the game wasn't that big, they say, you almost have to play both ways. So my third year I played linebacker and running back and a little bit of quarterback. And then my last year I was the starting quarterback and starting linebacker. And then a lot of times it was almost Markus is playing against other teams because I did everything I could. And out by then I hit the gym even a few times. So then 19-year-old Markus playing against sometimes 15, 16-year-olds in Germany, all of a sudden wasn't so fair anymore. And I think that's when I caught like the eye of guys like you, for example.
All right. Now, did you ever get a chance to play in those? Every state in Germany had an all-star team, and then
we won the German championship, the Baden-Württemberg Tiger Ducks.
And you would go to Berlin, and
that's right, and we won it. We won the whole tournament. Yeah, I had a pick six in there and all.
Bro, I'm telling you, that tournament was so fantastic. Tony Allen and I used to fly over, and we would watch. And I swear to God, they play like in 3 days on the weekend. I don't know how many games you guys played, but teams were playing and it was like awesome. You got to see so many players, and what a great experience for all you guys. So, all right, now youth football, you get to the point where obviously, and I remember watching you and how it was like, this is a man against boys, right? I mean, it's the same way, Sebastian. You guys stuck out so big next to everybody else. When did you start to think that, hey, I might like to go over and play in the States? I might like to go play college football.
College football, that took a while because sport was always fun for me. I never, like if you grow up in America even if you grow up in soccer Germany and you kind of become better and better, people all of a sudden start taking it more seriously. But taking American football as a German kid more seriously wasn't even really on my radar. And then kind of until the NFL Europe had some of their national coaches and had some of the scouts like you and Tony Allen come to these all-star games. And then there was some buzz when guys said, hey, you know what? You can actually maybe have a chance to be one of our NFL Europe national players. And I said, you know what? I can do this more than just for fun, like practice on a Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 8 and play a game.
I can get paid doing
well,
this.
Maybe even get paid, exactly. I went to Germany we have different levels of high school. So I went to the highest level of high school, which would allow me to go to university. Actually, I had coaches, Patrick Azuma called me one day and said, hey, you should maybe think about going in the NFL Europe. You can make the team there. And if you make the practice squad in the US afterwards, you can make it in the NFL and all that kind of stuff. I said, you know what, if this is kind of the interest of them already creating, and I want to go to school anyway, so I want to go get a college degree, maybe I can use this and play over in the States. And then the real fun part of the story actually begins when I made the decision not to go to the NFL Europe and go that route, when I decided to go the college route, which ultimately was the right decision because my first year in the NFL Europe was the last year the whole league existed. Nobody could think about that back then, but for me personally, it was definitely the right choice. And in 2006, I just made a highlight DVD from all my playing times in Germany, some quarterback highlights, mostly linebacker highlights. Actually, one game I even had my hand in the dirt when I played some defensive end. And a small school, Liberty University, 1AA school in Lynchburg, Virginia. They heard about me because an NFL Europe coach and an American guy who kind of try to facilitate players in the US heard about me. And I said, you know what, Virginia, this is a spot. Let's just see what else is around that area. So I made my highlight DVD. I translated all my transcripts from my German school. And my dad and I, we flew into Washington, D.C. We rented a car. And I said to him, hey, I mapped out these colleges. Had no idea what ACC was, what the Big East was, what 1AA was. I mean, no clue. Had even no clue what the kind of college recruiting process in America is all about. Because if I would have known all that, I would have never had the balls to actually fly to America and say, hey, I play football too. Because what happened, they looked at me like I'm crazy. Fortunately, it all worked out, but I flew to Washington, D.C. We went first to Lynchburg and saw Liberty University, and there was a coach there, and he looked at me and said, you know what, you're a big guy. Looked at my tape, and they actually said, you know what, I think we would offer you a scholarship, like you could play here. And that was the stadium already there, a smaller school, you know, nothing was upgraded like it is now, nice weight room. I was like, wow, this could be something. So we went to the next school. We went to the Richmond Spiders, where, funny enough, I actually saw their defensive line coach then, who was Patrick Graham, who is currently the defense coordinator of the New York Giants.
Yeah.
So I saw him. He obviously just saw this big German guy with his dad walking in, said, hey, I'm from Germany. You know, I play football. I have some highlight DVD. And he was like, do you have like an appointment here? Or like kind of like, what are you doing? And I said, no, I just looked you up and I just thought I'd come by. Obviously, that's not how recruiting works. And he was back then just as nice as he is now. And he said, you know what, let me give you a tape. I show you some of the coaches, and I tour you around. And we went on to the next school. I went to University of Virginia, which then I didn't know that they're in the ACC, but they were a bigger school. But after getting some buzz from these smaller schools, I thought, you know what, these look like a little bit more bigger schools, but still didn't know what the difference was. I went to UVA, actually there the first day, saw a guy from North Carolina who had a official recruiting visit. He was J.R. Sweezy, ended up being my college roommate, now my best friend.
You're kidding me.
Super Bowl champion, still playing in the league for 8 years, won the Super Bowl with the Seahawks, and we saw each other there. He was probably like, what is this German kid joining my recruiting visit? I've been waiting for this moment all my life. And UVA said, you're a big guy. Like the good thing is about Americans, we're so friendly and open, and I saw the effort that actually my dad and I flew all this way over, and we showed the effort. So they were nice enough. I was American enough to be friendly and not just kick me off the curb right away. And that was the next school. We went to ECU, we went to UNC.
Right, wait a second. Before you go any further, I gotta tell the truth on Americans, especially American football coaches. If you were 5'9", 170 pounds.
100%. 100%. 100%.
When you walk in the door, as impressive as you are or were, however you want to say it, and with that kind of story behind you, of course they're going to listen to you. All right, go on.
Yeah, I was like, back then I was 6'5", probably 245. So only played linebacker, in pretty good shape. I was 20 years old back then, just like about to graduate, or like graduated from school in Germany. And they were like, you know what, we might have something there that nobody else even knows about. And that was definitely a factor. Some strength coaches looked at me and said, just let me see your flexibility. And since I haven't really worked out much or haven't hit the gym much, I was not stiff. I was pretty fluid and everything. And they looked at, oh, your hips look great. And I had no idea what all this stuff even meant. And the next thing, we drove to Raleigh, North Carolina. The school is the Wolfpack. My dad's name is Wolfgang. And my dad just already looked at all these wolves out there in the statue and said, you know what, would be pretty cool if my son would play for the Wolfpack. Because even the gear would make sense for him and all that kind of stuff. So we went in there. It was Coach Chuck Amato, was actually in his last year there at NC State. And he looked at me and said, what position do you play? I said, linebacker. He looked at my hands. He said, you know what, we actually would need linebacker, but I'm telling you one thing, by the time you leave here, you would be 300 pounds. And I looked at him, I was like, I'm like 245. I'm never going to be fat. Like, oh, get out of here. Like, no way. I was like, this guy's nuts. But they wanted to try me out. But since I was already graduated from school, they weren't allowed to let me participate in one of those high school tryouts anymore. But then they said, you know what? We offer you anyways. At this point, I was sitting in the head football coach's office from NC State, overlooking 60,000 seat stadium in Raleigh, North Carolina, with the nicest sport athletic facilities I've ever seen in my whole life. And I was asking them, like, this stadium is crazy. Like, who's playing here? And they were like, well, we are. But I said, yeah, okay, fair enough. But like, who else? This can't be just for a bunch of college kids playing American football and like for six games a year. It's like, no, this is it. This is where we play on Saturdays. And I was like, this is unbelievable. And I got a scholarship. I kind of knew this is where I'll end up. I flew back to Germany. I was actually expecting to maybe enroll relatively soon, but then the coaches were fired, and I was kind of all by myself again. And I even during that time, I looked again. It's like, okay, I have this interest. Now NC State forgot about me. The coaches were fired. They obviously forgot about the German kid. Haven't heard from anybody. Sent out another bunch of DVDs, but soon enough, Coach O'Brien, new hire, came down from Boston College, was hired at NC State, said, Markus, sorry, it took so long. We would still like to offer you a scholarship. And then, fair enough, on May 17th, in 2007, not so little Markus anymore, but still 21, I left everything behind in Germany, came with two packed bags, flew to America, and yeah, haven't left since.
So Wolfgang's kid becomes a member of the Wolf Pack in Raleigh, North Carolina now. What?
Yeah, it's wild.
Well, it is unbelievable. I mean, it's such a great story. But now, you go out to practice the first day.
Oh, yeah.
And now, obviously, because you've been to Hauptschule and you had workable English, but what was it like when you got on the field with all those athletes I mean, you were 20, you weren't an 18-year-old kid, but it had to be a shock athletically.
Oh, I mean, the level of play, I always compared it, like even it's like you kick the ball around as a soccer player in America, and then all of a sudden you almost come to like a second-tier Bundesliga team. You know, it's like these guys have been playing or training on a professional level. They had playbooks, they had strength and conditioning training, you know, for years and years now. And I show up there and I'm on the field, but I just kind of made it all on effort. But I mean, I had a lot to learn, and they had me as a defensive end right away, and I was going against some offensive linemen, but I just gave it my all, and I really worked my butt off. And funny enough, with injuries happen along the line, I actually played as a true freshman.
And get out of here!
And became a freshman.
You
all
went from
ACC
youth football in Germany to all ACC freshman team.
Yeah, even made the honorable mention All-American team, and then I played defensive end there. Played a little bit more my second year, and then there was a little bit this sometimes this high story also has a little dip. J.R. Sweezy was playing defensive tackle. We had not many defensive tackle. We were roommates. And our coach said, you know, Markus, I would kind of like to have the two of you together. I think you actually I was more filling spots, but you still could use some more development time. We would like to redshirt you. So they decided to actually redshirt me my then junior year, when I then full-time moved to defensive tackle, which was tough because I've been playing for 2 years. But you know what? I said, hey, first of all, I have no idea. I do whatever these coaches tell me to do because they probably know better and have my best interests. If that's always the case, you don't know. But either way, I stuck it out. Played again my redshirt junior year. Still then never thought about going pro or any other level. And then, made it to my senior year when I was a full-time starter, played every game and had by far my best season. And by the time my senior year was over, funny enough, I was 300 pounds playing Division I college football. What I thought I would never be a fat kid. I was a big kid. I would still say I wasn't a fat kid, but I was a big guy, 300 pounds playing defense tackle, ACC football with NC State. And I got some more buzz and ended up being the first German to ever be invited to the scouting combine in Indianapolis.
All right. When did you know, or when did you feel, or when did the buzz, as you call it, get to the point where you thought, holy shit, I might get a chance to play in the National Football League?
I almost like mid through my senior year, because still to this day, I kind of very much live in the moment. And I still think if you do the right thing and you give it your all every single day, only good things come from it. And that might not be the NFL, but worst case scenario, I could have looked back at my college career and I would have had no regrets and I would have been happy with whatever came after that. But just by the nature of the beast, people talk to you and say, hey, there's maybe a chance. And even my college coach said, you know, after my football time was coming to an end and we were heading to a bowl game, when agents start to reach out to you, and I wasn't getting any big time agent calls, but there's these smaller agents that trying to establish themselves. They reach out to like lower tier players like myself. And I got lucky after my last game. I asked my coach that, hey, should I get an agent? How does this works? And he actually recommended me his own agent, who I'm still close with every day. When I really realized there's something there when I got the invite to the scouting combine in Annapolis and said, oh, like this is kind of where it's going. Because then I knew worst case scenario, somebody's going to invite me to training camp and I at least can smell some NFL air.
Okay. So you're in Indianapolis with I don't know, at that time, probably 500 best players.
300 is usually, 300 guys.
Yeah. All right. So 300 best college football players. How many defensive linemen were at the combine then?
Ooh, I couldn't actually tell you, but I mean, it must have been maybe 30, 40, 50 probably around that.
Right. So you guys, you're in a room, and explain to the viewers about, or listeners and viewers, about how crazy it is when you go into that meat market environment.
Yeah.
You're in there with the 30 or 40 best players at your position, and everybody kind of sizing each other up, and tell about that experience.
Well, even then there was like, I can tell, because I think it's more in the American football environment. Everything is very competitive, but I was like almost enjoying myself because I just always like, this is a great experience. Like, I'm so lucky. And guys were complaining, saying like, we have to get up at 4:00 in the morning for the drug test, and we have to get MRIs until 1:00 at night. And these 3-4 days are so tough. And I said, I'm one of 300 guys in all of America that gets invited to these 4 days. Like, what are you complaining about? Like, this is like the most fortunate or luckiest thing you can possibly be part of your life. Like, nobody gets to experience that kind of stuff. And definitely nobody ever from my country got to experience that kind of stuff. So I was just there and I was just kind of soaking it in. Before that, I went to IMG, to Bradenton, where now actually all the guys from the Pathway train. So I still know some people back there. And I worked out there, was well prepared by everybody. And I was like kind of ready to go. I was excited. Sure, it was tough. I mean, they call it the hardest job interview for a reason, those few days. I had Bruce Irving was my roommate, a big time NFL player. He was like telling me about all his time and his agent. And I was like, I still not really knew what's going on. I didn't have any in-person interviews. But they had this place that's called the train station, where every team and coaches had like a round table, and guys who didn't have in-person interviews were kind of waiting there and could have more informal interviews. And I was there. I think it opened up every night at 7 and went till 10. And I said, you know what? I'm be there every day from when they open those gates until they close, because I want to show every coach, even if they don't talk to me. It's like, if you do something crazy often enough, it kind of becomes more your habit. And they look at you and they say, this kid really wants it. If he stands here every night, he doesn't poke his head in there and wait. It's like, even if nobody talked to me for 3 hours in one day, I was just sitting there and standing there. So you know what? They may be just busy right now. Maybe they come back to me later. But I think it's just kind of shows how bad I wanted it. And I don't know if it had an effect on anything, but hey, Sebastian, a few years before me, was drafted in the second round without being invited to the combine. I was invited to the combine. I had to wait a little longer, but it ended up working out, and I ended up still being drafted. So I can't say I did anything wrong.
All right. Did you know Sebastian at that time? I mean, I'm sure you knew of him because the football world is so small in Europe. But did he serve as kind of like you said, well, maybe if he did it, I can do it, kind of deal?
Honestly, I knew of him, but even Sebastian's story back then was kind of so, like, you knew there was a German guy that played at Houston and a few years ago, but Sebastian was probably also in connection with the Patriots, that they weren't hyping him up and say, hey, Sebastian, give a bunch of interviews. He was very low key all his career. So even like in Germany, he never gave a bunch of interviews. It was like he did his own thing, which obviously worked great for him. He's one of the, Sebastian is one of my best friends too. Like, we talk all the time. We talked earlier today, and funny, like, he is one of the greatest athletes that ever came out of Germany into American sport. I mean, you really have to almost say there's Dirk Nowitzki, and then there's almost after that is Sebastian Vollmer. I mean, this guy played for the Patriots for 8 years and won 2 Super Bowls. It's unbelievable, and he's the nicest, most humble guy you could possibly imagine. And now, kind of over the years, our friendship grew more and more. But back then, we were almost strangers. The first interaction we ever had, which to a later point we can get to that again, was when the Giants and the Patriots always play each other in the preseason. When we actually saw each other on the field, was the first time we kind of were like, "Oh, hey, another German. Yep, also here."
Did you say Wie geht's? Wie geht es Ihnen?
Oh yeah, I mean,
you didn't speak English to each
no,
other.
of course we speak German. We're my fellow countrymen, and we speak our language. Yeah, 100%.
All right, so the build up to the draft is coming, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a buzz, and this big German kid, has been to the combine, and as you're getting ready for the draft.
Yeah.
All right. Did you? What was the sense that you had? Were you going to go early? Were you going to go late? Like, how did the teams communicate to you what they thought of you?
I had one tryout, which was with the Patriots, and other than that, there wasn't much communication. There was no glamorous talks like, "Hey, Markus, if this works out, we pick you there and there," and all that kind of stuff. It was more like I didn't know really what was going on. I mean, you read some stuff on the internet when some people say 4th round talent or 3rd round and maybe late round pick, and others say free agent. So, it was more like whatever happens. And but you still so the first day is round 1, second day is round 2 and 3. So I was like, okay, if whatever reason you maybe start going crazy, and the second day when it's like the late 3rd round, is like, you know what, maybe somebody's crazy enough, or maybe somebody screwed up and they would give me a call. But I thought ultimately on day 3 I would get a call, and then day 3 comes around 4 and 5 and 6, and I was like, wow, I mean, the draft is not fun if you're one of the last picks who gets drafted, because you're just waiting and waiting. And then some teams start calling me and said, hey, which I also realized later on in my career that this is actually a thing, guys. Teams are calling you, say, hey, we wouldn't want to draft you, but we'd like to have you for sure as one of our free agents. If we don't have any draft picks left over, it's the beginning of or the end of the 6th round or the beginning of the 7th round, we have no more draft picks, we would love for you to come to us, play for us. And I said, you know what, this draft's still going on, like, get off my phone. My mom called me too. It's like, hey, anything news? And every time your phone rings, you go crazy. It's like, mom, like, don't call me right now. You'll be the first one to know if I would. She was in Germany, so my dad was. She was like, anything happened yet? She was up late at night. I was like, no, don't call. Like, just don't call me. I had to wait. The Giants won the Super Bowl just before that. Funny enough, I was always like, look, New York was always, I visited New York before. It was always like, I thought the West Coast would be easier. I'm very close to my family, so a West Coast team would be nicer for me. Direct flights, what's easy how do you get from Frankfurt, back to the US? Like, what's the best for my family, how I can see them, most often. And it was we had some compensatory picks after me, but on the 32nd spot of the 7th round, shortly before that, my agent even told me, hey, the Patriots, if nobody calls you, they would like to sign you. So you should go to the Patriots, the best coach. They know with raw guys like you how to deal with them. You should probably go there. So I had in my back pocket and knew if nothing would work out, I would be a free agent with the Patriots, which is not a bad gig for a kid coming from Germany. But then round 7 comes around, the 32nd pick, Giants on the clock, and my agent called me and said, hey, the Giants, they're going to most likely give you a call now if everything works out. Waited, phone rang, New York Giants on the phone, the Super Bowl champion. At that point, I don't care what round it was. It could have been the 16th round. But the New York Giants were on the phone, said, "Hey, we'd love to have you." And that, I mean, it was such a moment to kind of all now, like, I'm even getting like, crazy to think about that kind of stuff. Like,
was it Jerry Reese that called you or Tom?
Yeah,
Coughlin?
it was. I mean, first it was one of our scouts and Jerry Reese and Tom Coughlin. You talked to your defensive line coach, and you talk to everybody and say, "Hey, we'd love to have you. I hope you're in good shape. I hope everything is fine." And yeah, from then on out, I was kind of a New York Giant, and that was, I mean, an unbelievable feeling, I have to say.
Now you get drafted,
Yeah.
and for the fans that don't know, I think it's either the weekend after the draft, they bring all the rookies in together, right? And you have your first pro football experience.
Yeah, rookie minicamp.
Yeah, in the facility with your rookie minicamp. How big a thrill is it to walk into that facility? Because I've been through those doors and see those Super Bowl trophies in that lobby and realize that, the tradition of this club is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and even if you tell your friends and family in Germany, if people who don't know that much about American football, and you tell them maybe I've been drafted by another team, they're like, "What is this? What did they heard of?" But even in Europe, even like years ago now we have a different football environment, of course, but that was in 2012. You've heard about the New York Giants, and especially they have just won the Super Bowl. And I walk in there, and when I played Madden, I played with the Giants because they had the best defensive line. So you always play with the guys that you think are the best, and they had the most dominant defensive line. So then I walk in those doors, and then they told me, it's like, "Well, you don't have your work visa yet." I was still under my college visa, and since the Giants are the kind of organization that does everything by the books, they said football practice is technically work, so you're not allowed to participate in rookie minicamp. And I was like,
"You went up there and stood on the sideline?"
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
and Tom Coughlin was there. He's like, "Well, you better have your helmet on anyways." And I was like, "Well, this is not my fault."
And be 15 minutes early for meetings.
Exactly. But that was then kind of like a little punch in the gut, because obviously I wanted to prove, they drafted me. I was fired up. I wanted to show what I can do. But everything worked out. The visa came in, and then I was ready for training camp, and obviously you have the off-season workouts that I could participate in. But all of a sudden, you have defensive line meetings. You just watch the Super Bowl. You play with the Giants on Madden, and then you sit in a room with Justin Tuck, with O.C. Human-Euro, with Jason Pierre-Paul, with Linville Joseph, with Chris Canty. I mean, these guys with Rocky Bernard. I mean, with guys who have been in the league for a long time, have won Super Bowls, accomplished everything, just beat Tom Brady a few months back. I mean, and then here Markus from Germany sits amongst these literally giants.
Was Strahan there at that time, or had?
No, Strahan wasn't there anymore. I'm not that old.
Come on now.
No, but Strahan even came by, and funny enough, Strahan actually lived in Mannheim for a long time, in the city where I was born in. So there was an immediate German connection. He was a great guy right away. Talked to me. Even had stuff in common just by, he know more about my area than anybody in the entire organization. So that was funny. I said, "Oh, Kiffertal." He's like, "Yeah, this is where the Benjamin Franklin village was, the barracks where he grew up." And I said, "Yeah, I drove by there when I went to school in Mannheim every morning. My subway or my tram, whatever you want to call it, went right through his barracks." So but being in there, Eli Manning was in his locker room right across from me. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Did you ever have any of those moments where you just sat in there and looked around and went, "Holy shit, I'm here. I'm here"?
Honestly, probably like every day of my entire career. I really like it. Never settled in that this is like this actually really is a thing that I'm, and it was, it's still like to this day when you think it was unrealistic. And then even my rookie year as a 7th round draft pick, I never thought even, will I make the team or not? And then again, what I also didn't realize, when you make the team, if they don't call your phone. So they don't tell you, "Congratulations," there is no banners waving. It's not like, "Hey, congrats, you made it, you're part of it." It's more like, no, if we don't get a call, just show up to work the next day. And that's...
Okay, who was your roommate your rookie year in training camp?
My rookie year was, I think it was, well, in training camp rookie year, I think it was Matt Broha, another like undrafted free agent guy that put with me. But Mark Herdzlik actually trained with me down at IMG, and he was drafted, or he was actually a free agent the year before with the Giants, just won a Super Bowl, and I just knew him. And the great guy that he is, he called me and said, "Hey, Marcus, congrats being part of the Giants, being a teammate." And I didn't know if I make the team, so after that, I didn't look for an apartment or anything, because I was all up in the air. And Mark said, "Hey, if you make a team, if all works out, why don't you move in the first few months with me, and you can live with me." So not my camp roommate, but kind of until November, until I got my own apartment in Hoboken, New Jersey. I lived with Mark Herdzlik, and he took me under his wing. And I mean, I learned from a pro's pro kind of how to behave in that kind of league.
I tell you what, that is great guy to be around. Now, the night before final cutdown.
Yeah.
Right. Did they come to you? Did your position coach come to you the day before, a couple of days before? You're going to say, "Hey, kid, you're going to make this team," or did
Nothing.
Did you went to bed that night not knowing if the call was going to come?
And I don't even know, is the call going to come at 9 a.m.? Is it at 4 p.m.? Do I know by 8 o'clock for sure? And I asked guys like, well, if usually then they release at 9 at night the roster, but I was like, if they don't call you by 4 o'clock, it's fine. So I was just hoping my phone wouldn't go off. Once again, my dad came over, another special moment in my football career. We were actually the U.S. Open were in New York during that time, and I was like, I need a distraction. So we got some tickets, we watched some tennis. Fair enough. Phone rang. My mom. Anything happened yet? I was like, "Mom, don't call. Like, please. I don't. This phone cannot ring today." And but obviously she wanted to check on me, and I didn't have any news for her then. But next day I showed up to work, and fair enough, I was one of these because the roster, all of a sudden you have training camp with 90 guys, and all of a sudden then you come into work the next day and you're 53 guys, and maybe some of the practice squad guys are around. The whole building looks a lot different all of a sudden, and then you realize, wow, I actually made this New York Giants football team.
I'm glad you described that to the listeners and the viewers, because that is such a surreal experience. And especially when you're a fringe kid, a young kid, like if you're drafted in the first 3 rounds, you're going to make the team because they got so much money wrapped up in you. When you're a 7th rounder, you got to prove that you can. And I know with always with us, it's those guys that are unsure. You just tell them, "Hey, stick around the hotel, don't go anywhere," because it could go either way.
Yeah, and make sure your playbook is right next to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What a feeling of a relief it must have been to walk in there and know that you were really a Giant.
But then they also tell you, well, you're a Giant now, and if you don't perform, you can cut you still any day. And it was like, wait, what? This is not it. Like, I'm not good, at least for a certain amount of time. Like, no, this is a very competitive environment. No contracts are guaranteed. If you screw up a few weeks in a row, you're still out of there. And they have every Tuesday, they have guys trying out for your position if you mess up in practice or in a game. So you can almost never take a breather and never relax. But I mean, ultimately, when you get some playing time and you get some positive feedback, you can kind of be like, okay, at least this year, maybe until next training camp, at least this season, I kind of have a spot. And then unfortunately, it was, I think, week 10 or 11. Actually, as a rookie, I played in every game. I got a lot of snaps. Again, some injuries happened on the defensive line. I was pushed into fire, got a decent amount of reps. And then we played in Cincinnati. It was bad turf. I took on a double team, stabbed through the center. I had a guard push through my shoulder. The running back, I did a good job from the play perspective because I kept 2 guys busy. I wasn't driven off the ball. Drove the center back, and then the running back drove right in the center, and I was a little bit of 1 foot. And then my ACL popped. Week 11, after just kind of getting the groove of it, kind of getting the feel of the NFL game, tear my ACL. And then again, I asked Ronnie Barnes, an historic athletic trainer, head athletic trainer of the New York Giants, actually the first Black head athletic trainer in NFL history, one of the nicest and greatest people you will ever meet. And I was like, Ronnie, is this kind of it for me? Will they just kick me to the curb and party over? Because I don't know about this. I didn't know about the business enough. And they said, Markus, don't worry. We're not like that. You're going to make our rehab here. Everything will be fine. You will take your time. And you know what? We try again. We try all over again next year. And the Giants were always a first-class organization, as they're known to be. They gave me a lot of time in my second year, didn't rush me back. Had a good surgery, a good rehab. And then I played again my second year. The first few weeks, I was still on PUP, physical unable to perform list. So I didn't count against the roster. I was rehabbing during training camp. And then, I finished out the rest of the season and actually played a good amount of time.
All right. The first German player to ever score a touchdown in the National Football League, correct?
Pretty cool, right?
I'm serious now. How awesome is that?
Yeah, ridiculous. Like also I mean, of course, you need luck in anything you do in life, but I mean, good things happen when you run to the football, right? That's like a typical coaching expression. And if you get after it every practice, and I mean, there's a fumble in front of you, and if you run to it every time, you might not get it every time, but if you create the habit, then ultimately, if there is an opportunity for you to do something big, you just increase your odds of you being the guy, of you being at least part of something good happens. So my third year of my career, we're playing an away game against the Tennessee Titans. Zach Mattenberger was dropping back for a pass. JPP, as he does like just as good, who also just won another Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. JPP came around the corner, strip sack, forced fumble. I pushed the pocket, saw this ball laying in front of me, got rid of my offensive lineman, picked up the ball, I think like 24 yards. Luckily enough, there was nobody near around me, and I almost had a kind of an open lane right to the end zone. And if you ever see a picture of kind of how my face looked like when I crossed that line, I was just hoping there was no flags and nothing, but I was like, I actually just scored a touchdown in the NFL.
Was that your first touchdown since youth football? Did you
score?
Yeah.
I mean, I scored, like, since I played quarterback in Germany, I scored a lot of touchdowns, but never scored in college football. I mean, to score as a defensive player in general, very rare. To
score as a defensive tackle.
To score with defensive tackle in the NFL, I mean, that doesn't happen. And then I didn't think about the whole German part. Actually, some reporters mentioned it to me after, but I was more happy about, because we had a big turnover problem and we haven't had scored a defensive touchdown all season. So that was an emphasis from us from a just defensive football perspective. So I was just happy that I could be the first defensive player to score a touchdown in our season up to that point. So that was kind of the emphasis at first. And then obviously me personally just scoring a touchdown period was, I mean, if people ask me how does it feel, but if you are a big American football fan and somebody would tell you you get to score a touchdown in the NFL, the way you would feel that moment is exactly how I feel, because I love this game, and it was like telling a little kid, like, hey, you get to score in the NFL for a touchdown. And it was just unbelievable. Unfortunately enough, we actually won that game too, so I could celebrate. So because sometimes you play good and you have great action, you make a score or a sack, but then your team loses, and then you can't really be happy even you did something good yourself. So we won, scored a touchdown, and it was really a wild moment.
I tell you what, it is so cool the way you describe it. And I think that it is a moment that really, I don't even know if you understand the magnitude of what that is, what that accomplishment meant, and what you've done as a player to pave the way for the kids that are coming now. I mean, you and Sebastian and all of the guys.
Bjorn too, like the first German to be a first-round draft pick. Sebastian, the first German to win a Super Bowl. Now, I mean, being the first to be invited to the scouting combine. Like all these, like everything sounds crazy until somebody does it, right? And all these things now, and the game grows internationally, fortunately, so much right now. And all these things now don't seem completely crazy and unrealistic anymore, because there are guys who have done it. And if you are a young football player, especially maybe outside of the US, who thinks, you know what, that will never happen. This is crazy. I mean, it's not easy and it's still unlikely, but there is a chance it can happen.
I'm going to tell you this because I've been to the academy and I've seen those kids play. I've seen those kids practice. I think someday, I hope the NFL recognizes just how important the contributions that you guys made to this goal of having more international players in the game has been, because you really provided the blueprint. Now, not everybody's going to get their dad to fly to Lynchburg, Virginia, and go on.
Not everybody comes out of this womb 6'4", 300 pounds. So, yeah. So I mean, there's some not only for there. I mean, there is a lot of and a ton of restrictions, but there's still a possibility. There's still a way. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about, there's this big emphasis now. And it's so ironic to me, Marcus, that, after having been in NFL Europe and being at Wald Stadium and Rhein Stadium and those crowds and, just the passion of the German fans for the game and how much they loved NFL Europe. And then they lose it. And now, here it is, I guess 10 years, 11, 12 years later, the NFL's on a mission to go back.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel? And how much are you involved in all of that?
Well, first of all, about time. And as a German, I sometimes almost look envious of what happened in London, because a lot of times everything what happens with the London games and all the push there seems kind of like the easier route just because from the language barrier. But if you even look back in the NFL Euro days, you know better than anybody.
Yeah.
5 of the 6 teams were all in Germany. If you look at who had the most fans, the most loyal game, almost where was the game accepted the most, like especially in Europe, was Germany. And now the NFL kind of seeing again what is happening. And I mean, I have my hands in a variety of things. I mean, after I was done with the Giants, I was signed by the Patriots. I didn't make that team then, and then ultimately I realized my active football career is over. But I wanted to stay close to the game and close to the sport. So I thought, how can I change my mind from an athlete to also still give something back to the game and still stay involved? So I actually applied. My back then girlfriend lived in New York, so I thought, I was in Hoboken, New Jersey, pretty much New York. That was like, other than Raleigh, North Carolina, my only home bases. So I knew kind of this would be the area where I would come back to. So I applied to Columbia University and got my master's in sports management, just to kind of, after this crazy football time, educate myself again about the entire sports industry. And during that time, I was broadcasting football games, free TV rights, were giving to German TV stations again. The Super Bowl was shown not only, but also regular season games were showing more. They built a whole programming around it. The Patriots reached out to me and Sebastian after we both stopped playing and said, hey, why don't you broadcast our preseason games to Germany? So since 2017 now, Sebastian and I are broadcasting the Patriots preseason game directed to Germany, where, funny enough, me and Sebastian are the only commentators. We don't have any experts in there. It's just me and him.
Wait a second. Then you got 2 experts. You got you and Sebastian.
But you don't have a commentator. So you have 2 experts or 2 commentators or no commentators. Or but funny enough, we kind of have our own way of doing it, and we have a great time, and a lot of people tune in. And even that was kind of helping grow the game again. Then we were regular guests on a free TV station in Germany. Then, funny enough, after our commentary experience for the Patriots, we reached out to DAZN, who is the rights holder in Germany for Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night football. We told them, hey, why don't we do the same thing for you as we did for the Patriots? So me and Sebastian in 2019 were broadcasting all of Monday night football to Germany. And I would say I had sometimes a little bit more the play-by-play role, and he was more the expert, because I probably also talk a lot more than Sebastian does. So I think that was kind of a natural thing. And we did all that. And then after all this happened, in the season, you're busy working for media and this kind of thing. But also with me going back to school, I wanted to learn more about the game, the other part of the game that I wasn't too familiar with. And since I had such a lovely and wonderful experience with the New York Giants, I thought, it'd be great to go kind of back where it all started and learn more about the game from a different aspect. So I know this NFL world from a player perspective. I know this world from a media side. And the one thing I don't know is actually I know a lot from the NFL because I was working closely to especially the NFL International and their goals. But the one thing I don't know is like the organizational structure. How does the front office work and look like? So my plan was to reach out to the New York Giants after Monday Night Football was over, and we broadcasted a Super Bowl for Miami in 2020. And I was really about to call the Giants in a few weeks. And then I came back from Miami because we broadcasted Monday Night Football out of a studio in Miami. So me and Sebastian flew to Miami every Monday, flew to Miami, did Monday Night Football, recorded our podcast Tuesday, flew back Tuesday afternoon. That was kind of our whole football year, which was, as you can imagine, flying to Miami 18 times a year was a lot of fun. And then I came back out of one of those trips and I had a voicemail from the New York Giants say, "Hey, Markus, we have this alumni internship program where we like to get guys, that we were familiar with and kind of know how they are, shadow and look behind the scenes of the organization." I said, another crazy how it's meant to be story. So I was like, yeah, 100%. That's a good idea, guys. And a few weeks later, I showed up there and I had an interview. They were happy to take me, and usually it's a 6-month program, and you shadow a bunch of different fields. You go to PR, you go to community relations, you help the player development side. But I said, I didn't go to school for no reason. I want to know about player contracts, and I want to kind of know really about the pro scouting side. How do you get more players? Because also that's something looking in the future. You're trying to get more players from other markets in the league to know how that are all the structures and how that works. So I kind of then experienced the draft from another side. So last year, it was a crazy year because of COVID. So I experienced the draft virtually because everybody was out of the office. I was at every home game for the New York Giants last year. It was kind of having a private showing to football games because the stadiums were completely empty, and the people, the media and the organization, nobody was in the stadium. And this year I had my first experience kind of being in the draft room and experience how a football team drafts their players and how kind of all that works from that perspective. So that kind of opened my eyes again and said, now as a German who lived through and done what I did, to now actually being able to get that insight and perspective from experiencing the draft and recruiting and how that all works. I mean, unbelievable full circle moment again, to being drafted myself and seeing our general manager, Dave Gettleman, doing these draft calls. And like nobody knew actually how it feels to be one of these guys who get that phone call. And that was kind of like, every time they picked up the phone, it's like, okay, we're going to pick Kadarius Toney's the first round. We're going to pick him today. Or we're going to pick, Uzi. I mean, all these guys that we drafted this year. And it's like, you know what? I see the way they pick up the phone, and I know how these guys feel at the other end of the line, and experiencing that was, again, an unbelievable feeling for me.
All right. I want you to give your opinion as an ex-Giant and a guy that played in the league about where you think the Giants are right now in terms of, Joe Judge, new program, different way of doing things. Saquon's coming back off an injury. Jones has got so much pressure on him to take another step. They draft Kadarius Toney to give him another weapon. Is the offensive line good enough? Can the defense play as well?
Kenny Galladay to come to the New York Giants.
Yeah, I mean, what's your take on this football team?
So even before I started working for the Giants again, I always start with teams. You almost have to kind of pick one of the Patriots guys because, I mean, it seemed like they have the blueprint, to how it works and how to be a competitive football team year in, year out, because the entire NFL is set up to be through the board. Everybody has the same opportunity. And if you're very good one year, you get worse draft picks. You should be not as good the next next year. But to be consistently that good, they have something figured out. And I know Coach Judge from being in the Patriots for about 4 or 5 months when I was a free agent. And I always liked his personality because every football coach is a tough guy and they're very direct and have their own ways of doing things. But he is a great person. I mean, he is an honest, direct, solid guy. You know where you stand with him. So of course, he's a tough football coach, but he definitely has a human element in him, which sometimes it feels like the coaches don't have, but he definitely has that. And he expects a lot, but I was even happy before I joined the organization again to kind of, my former team did a good job of picking a guy like this. And now seeing him, how he runs stuff. And I know even our front office gets a bunch of negative press sometimes, but it's also very hard to do things the right way. And I think that's something the Giants pride themselves in. And I'm biased. Obviously, I have to say that kind of stuff. If not, they're going to come to the office tomorrow. And this is not a German podcast, but nobody understands. It's an English podcast, so I have to be careful what I say. But no, I think they did a really good job this offseason, adding the right weapons for Daniel Jones, or even just needs for our team. I think it was good that we signed back big names in the defense like Leonard Williams. I think we have with Logan Ryan, one of the most veteran, great football player minds on the team. Now, we talked earlier, Patrick Graham, who was a guy that I saw when I handed out DVDs in 2006 at Richmond, who now was a defensive line coach with the Patriots, actually was the guy that worked me out from the Patriots before the draft, and now is a guy that I see in the office every day, but is also one of the best defensive football minds in the NFL and a great guy. So I think they have a great building blocks and all the right pieces in place to be a good team this year. But everybody can talk how great they are, but the thing is about our sport, you have to show it, and you can't show it once or twice. You have to show it on a consistent basis for like 16, 17 weeks.
I thought last year when Joe went in there and it was a radical change. I mean, it was a radical change about how he ran practice, about what training camp was going to be like, about what toughness was about. And I thought about week 4 or 5, you could really see the buy-in in their football team. And the Giants were a tough out the entire season. Even though they lost Saquon, they had trouble scoring points, the defense played extremely well. You talk about toughness and discipline and all of the, those words that, a lot of coaches talk about, but then they have a hard time getting their players to play that way. I was really impressed by the Giants last year. And I think it's in my personal opinion, I think they're one of the teams that is going to be battling tooth and nail with the Cowboys for that NFC East crown.
And you said week 4 is actually when we were losing only games. So as a new young head coach, he's not an old guy that, he still has to establish his own coaching resume. And as a young guy who has definitely his own ways, and then you lose as a team, to then turn the team around and have the second half of the season have a winning record, and you play the way you play, and you're in every game against competitive opponent. I think that shows, hopefully, where this team is heading. But also to keep a team when you lose a bunch of games as a new guy, that's a hard thing to do.
You are right.
And I think that kind of shows the kind of person he is.
Yeah, no question. But listen, man, we could sit here and talk all evening. First of all, I got to say thank you so much for coming on and doing this, because every time I see you, whether it's at the Super Bowl or wherever, it's always a blast to talk to you. You've been that way since the first time I met you, and I got to say, I'm proud of you. Thank you very much for coming on the show, and thank you very much for what you've done for all of those kids that now are coming behind you.
I really appreciate it, and I think also I have to throw the ball back to you, because I mean, if it wouldn't be for guys like you who know the game from the US, from Canada, from college football, from colleges like Hawaii, to actually look at young kids like me, even 16, 17-year-olds in Germany, and still giving back to the game. Still, I mean, I always prepare a little bit for when I talk to people. So I looked Wikipedia you up, and you were the only top recruiter for talent ever in a I think AQ, non-top football FCS school. Like you were like the only recruiter in history who ever broke like the top 10 or top 20 list. And I was like, this is the kind of guy you are, because you know how to talk to, really, you know how to talk to young people, and you are the person that you are. And I mean, it takes guys like you to grow the game as well. And I think the game gave us so much, so the least we can do is give back.
Boy, that's exactly how I feel. And again, thank you so much for the day. We would love to have you on in the future. Obviously, I know you're busy with the Giants, but you know, one day when you're the general manager of the Giants, maybe we'll have you back again as this for yourself.
Oh no, I can't have that much pressure. And my wife likes me too much. And my wife.
You would never see her. You'd never see her.
No, she wouldn't allow it. She wouldn't allow it. Let's see what happens in the future.
All right, man. Thank you so much,
you.
Marcus. All right, aloha. Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.